Good afternoon and welcome to Business This Week. I am Blessing AG. I know you're surprised because usually you would see me in the studio. But we decided to take the show out of the studio today and come to the office of an economist, one you've always seen on the show, Professor Mike Obadan. Very soon you'll be meeting him. I want to look at the year 2020. So today it's about the year 2020 in retrospect. And we'll also get into the year 2021. Let's focus on 2021. Let's see how we've done in 2020 and what are the issues that are taking us now into 2021. So stay with us.
Advice to the public on the coronavirus. The World Health Organization, WHO, recommends you take the following measures. Know that most people who become infected experience mild illness and recover, but it can be more severe for others. Take care of your health and protect others by doing the following.
Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer or wash them with soap and water. Washing your hands with soap and water or using alcohol-based hand sanitizer kills viruses that may be on your hands.
Maintain at least 1 meter, which is 3 feet distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing.
Hands touch many surfaces and can pick up viruses. Once contaminated, hands can transfer the virus to your eyes, nose, or mouth. From there, the virus can enter your body and can make you sick.
Make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. This means covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then dispose of the tissue immediately.
Stay home if you feel unwell. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention and call in advance. Calling in advance will allow your healthcare provider to quickly direct you to the right health facility. If you develop fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical advice promptly, as this may be due to a respiratory infection or other serious condition.
Be informed.
Be prepared.
Be smart.
Be safe.
Be ready to fight COVID-19.
This message is brought to you courtesy Independent Television and Radio.
Thank you for staying with us on Talking Business. So you can meet my guest now, Professor Mike Obadan. Happy New Year to you, sir.
Well, same to you.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you have great celebration.
Thank you very much for having us here. So let's talk about the outgone year, 2020. How did it start for Nigeria economically?
Well, the year 2020 has been, what we can say, fair in terms of economic performance. It could have been worse. So many challenges surfaced during the year, both for the government and the state governments and the Nigerian people, because of an economic crisis that has been induced or was induced by a health crisis in the form of COVID-19 pandemic that emanated from abroad. And that health crisis engulfed the whole world, which necessitated the lockdown of economies in Europe, America, many other developing countries, including Nigeria. And when you lock down an economy, it means that only very few economic activities will be going on, perhaps in the area of production of essential goods and services. If the majority of economic activities, become immobilized or demobilized, as it were, then total national output drops. And because of Nigeria's economy's strong linkage with the global economy, any disturbances in the global economies or major economies of the world are quickly transmitted in the form of negative impact to the Nigerian economy. And that was what happened in the case of COVID-19, which induced lockdowns in the advanced world. They reduced their demand for goods and services which they import from Nigeria, particularly crude oil, which is the major source of foreign exchange earnings for Nigeria, and also for naira revenue, which government uses to finance its various governance activities. And so with the COVID-19 came like a thunderbolt, and the impact has been very, very devastating for the Nigerian economy. It has affected adversely government finances, revenue. It has affected the foreign exchange that we earn. And because foreign exchange is not coming in as before, the quantity of foreign exchange available to Nigerians to buy goods and services abroad or pay school fees and all that has reduced. And that's the reason why the exchange rate is going up. The naira exchange rate is going up. So there have been several challenges in the various sectors of the economy. In that segment of the economy we call the real sector, which produces goods and services, we've had recession there now for contraction of the gross domestic output for 2 quarters. That's recession, and made worse by rising inflation. Incidentally, in many other advanced countries that have experienced recession, their price levels are falling. So it's not a question of battling two problems. In Nigeria, the government has been battling two major problems: recession, in which event economic activities have reduced, businesses have reduced, unemployment is rising. In which event, if that was the major problem, all the government needed to do was to pump more money into the system to revitalize economic activities after the lockdown, and then you see the economy will begin to pick up. But when you have prices are rising, inflation is going up, and at the same time unemployment is rising, output is declining, it poses a policy dilemma for government in terms of what to do. And that's where Nigeria's problem is unique compared to what you have in the US, Europe, and America. And so government has had the challenge of not having enough revenue, how to combat inflation, how to combat recession, and then low oil prices, and so on. So the real sector has been highly troubled, such that the micro, small, and medium enterprises have been struggling to survive. Perhaps we'll find time to discuss some of the responses by government to even help those enterprises. You find that in the external sector, there are also issues, very serious issues. And like I've said, foreign exchange earning is going down. External reserves is going down. We are not selling enough exports abroad, but we are importing. And so both the current account and the financial account of the balance of payments, they are in deficit. And foreign investors are not having enough confidence on the Nigerian economy because of uncertainties. And so they are not bringing in money into the country. Rather, what is happening is that the foreign money already in Nigeria is being taken away. And in other words, there has been intensified capital outflows. And that one has put further pressure on the exchange rate and the foreign exchange market. Then in the fiscal sector, government revenue is far short of what government is spending. And hence there is fiscal deficit. As at September this year, for 9 months, federal government incurred fiscal deficit of about 4.2 trillion naira. By this year ends today, perhaps it will be a little more than that. And in the 2021 budget, 5.2 trillion naira is budgeted as fiscal deficit. What does that one mean? It means that because government revenue by way of taxation is not enough, government must necessarily borrow money. It will continue to borrow either from within the country or outside the country. And when it borrows, then it must repay the loan and service the debt. That's why today nearly 3 trillion naira is being used to service debt, both domestic and foreign. So there is debt build up, public debt build up and high debt servicing, which means that only little revenue is available to meet normal governance activities, meet personnel costs, meet overhead costs, and more importantly, implement capital projects for infrastructure. So if there are challenges in the area of infrastructure development, it's because there are so many other challenges government is trying to to battle or to address. Then the financial sector, that one has been doing relatively well, in response to the various monetary policy measures, pushed out by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And so you find that in that sector, even when the real sector is experiencing recession, that sector seems to be doing well. The total deposits, of people and firms is increasing, and the amount of credit that they are giving to the real sector operators is also going up because of central banks' loan to deposit policy ratio, which makes it mandatory for them to mobilize savings and lend the money, to real sectors to grow their businesses, employ more people, invest, and make the economy to start to tick. So these are numerous issues in the economy, in 2020. But then government has not folded its arms. Both the monetary and the fiscal authority have been trying their best. The central bank, even just as COVID-19, was making its, debut on the Nigerian soil, central bank rolled out numerous interventions because it had foreseen that, with lockdown, most micro, small, and medium enterprises will not be able to survive. And so it has different interventions, targeted at households and MSMEs to enable them access credit from between 3 million and 25 million naira at 5% interest rate, compared to what they normally will get from commercial banks, 20-something%, 30%, and so on.
Towards the end of 2020, in December precisely, we saw that the government reopened 4 of the nation's borders that were closed. A lot of persons were excited, particularly those who thought that it would be easy to get rice. But the importation of the ban on importation of rice remained, as well as that on poultry products. And also in 2020, we saw the ratification of the AFCTA agreement, which the federal government says the month of January 2021 is going to be a campaign month for the AFCTA agreement. Now, how did the reopening of the border in December impact on the economy? And what do you think is going to be the impact also in the year 2021, as well as the AFCTA agreement that has been ratified?
Let's get it clear first and foremost that there was very cogent rationale for closing the borders in the first place. It was observed that smugglers, either of imported goods or even goods produced within the country, were more or less sabotaging the economy. Goods that were not supposed to come in, they were coming in, particularly small arms, which are given to bandits, criminals to terrorize the Nigerian people. And then petroleum products were being smuggled out. And so the reasons were quite cogent to say if the neighboring country governments cannot help to check the activities of those who smuggle those things to the country, then definitely let's close the borders. So they were to reciprocate Nigerian government gestures by also ensuring that criminals don't go through their borders and so on. Now, I think the major reason, why the government reconsidered the reopening, relates to concerns about rising inflation, and perhaps what you mentioned, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think with rising inflation up to 14.89% in November, people were having the feeling that perhaps certain goods were in short supply, in the country, and that if the borders are reopened and goods are allowed to come in legitimately, that will boost supply. I think that's the kind of thinking. So, but the period is relatively short now to assess the impact of that one on inflation. Perhaps by January, February, we will see how much goods now came into the country officially.
Okay, by January, February end.
Yeah, February end 2021. We should be able to know what effects the opening of the border has had, whether it has boosted supply, of legitimately, imported commodities in the country, and hence bring down prices. And we also see what other possible implications the reopening has had, whether those negative activities that were not desired in the first place are now, whether they have intensified again. So we will know that one. Whether people are importing small arms, or doing other, terrible things that the state, does not desire. So let's be hopeful. Let me also say that the issue of rice, rice not really banned per se, to say, never bring rice into the country. I think what the monetary authority really did to say rice, along with 42 or 3 other commodities, are no longer eligible for foreign exchange officially to import rice, because there are more critical industrial inputs and materials, transport infrastructure that need to be imported. So those ones will have priority, over things that can easily be produced in Nigeria. And in any case, there is the need to encourage local producers. We cannot be encouraging farmers to produce rice, maize, corn, and all that, and at the same time, they are being undermined by saboteurs, who are importing all kinds of goods to undermine them. And so, let's watch and see, what the impact, would be. But the issue of rice production, I believe that, Nigeria, we in Nigeria, we're in a position to produce plenty of rice. I think what even happened during just before the Christmas festivities was that some formal organizations like commodity exchanges were, along with some individuals, were buying up rice produced in the rice producing areas of the north and hoarding them with a view to jacking up prices. So I believe such people and firms, must be fished out, and properly dealt with in accordance with the law, because they are undermining government policies, creating the impression of scarcity, that all the money government is pumping into rice farming and other commodity farming is not yielding anything, which is not the case, and so on.
Another development that we also saw in 2020 that has now also come into 2021 was the directive by the federal government to telecommunications operators to ensure the compulsory attachment of NIN, National Identity Number, to the SIM card registration. Now, there's a deadline for it, which is in February, first week of February. Nigerians are busy now running to NIMSE office to ensure that they are enrolled and also link their NIN with their SIM cards. Now, for those who may not be able to meet the deadline and eventually get disconnected, what would be the economic implication of this? Because we live in a time where a lot of businesses are tied to the internet. You need phones for communication. What would be the economic implication of this?
Well, thank you very much. The issue of linking the national identity number to the telephone numbers of individuals and organizations is a desirable one, to the extent that it is targeted at checking the security implications of the lack of linkage. Perhaps, criminals, bandits and all that, could not be tracked effectively because of this loss of identity. So it's a good policy which should have been, implemented over a medium-term period. I don't think it's something that needed to be rushed, within 2 weeks as initially envisaged. More so as, the majority of Nigerians do not have or did not have the national identity numbers at the time of implementation of that policy. Even those who got national identity numbers 5-6 years ago, they do not have the card, so they just have the numbers. But majority don't have the numbers, and so the policy implementation, does not seem to be well timed at this time that the second wave of coronavirus has surfaced in Nigeria, and government is doing everything to ensure that all the coronavirus safety protocols are complied with by Nigerians to minimize the infection rates, the cases. And we are now saying people should go to national identity, centers, to start congregating and then struggling to get numbers. Although I understand now that there are other ways, that have been devised which may not require congregation of people in certain places. But the reports we're getting, even up to today, indicate that, citizens are still crowding together in national identity, company premises in various places. So I think it should have been, well thought out to say, let's have a proper handle on the coronavirus pandemic. Let's have a vaccine. It's going to be prevented, and then have a reasonable time period for registration for the NIM and then the linkage. But in relation to your question, if the government carries out the threat to block the telephone numbers of many Nigerians, maybe some of them are in businesses that have to do with technology, internet and all that, that one can create another set of problems, because you then find a situation whereby such online businesses may not be able to continue. People may be rendered unemployed. Those that are unemployed, may be tempted to do other things that the society heavily frowns at. And so I will appeal that government should not carry out that threat, that it should ensure that adequate time is provided for Nigerians to register for the national identity numbers, and then thereafter link the numbers to their telephones. This should be done in a seamless way, and not in a way as if something untoward will happen immediately if it is not done. It's nothing like that at all. So I will appeal to government to, be a bit generous by extending the time, and then make it possible for people to register for their names seamlessly. Because even before now, you go to a national identity card office, it's a hell of time to get either a new number or to make a change or something like that. So these things should be done in a very seamless way without inflicting much pain on the Nigerian people, and also without compounding the coronavirus pandemic, which government is doing all its best to ensure that we do not have a second wave that is very devastating and debilitating to the society.
All right. Since you mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, we're in 2020 now. So the COVID-19 pandemic is still very much around. What are the prospects for Nigeria's economy, considering that some countries, European countries, are on a lockdown, and then we are still a mono economy? How would that affect us? How can government mitigate the impact of this?
The major trigger of our economic crisis is COVID-19. And as I've consistently argued, if the Nigerian government and the other governments have a good handle on the virus, minimize its infection, and then, of course, with the advent of COVID-19, a vaccine now. Now, there is vaccine developed by 2 or more companies. With such vaccines, if they are accessible to us here, we take the vaccines, we still continue to comply with the safety protocols for COVID-19, we should be able to have a good handle. The same thing should happen in the rest of the world, because we have been told by medical scientists that merely taking the vaccine and then we go back to business as usual, throw away our masks, forget social distancing, that one will not be helpful. That even when we take the vaccine, we should still comply with the safety guidelines for quite some time. So I think a lot will depend on the extent to which the world, global countries, have a good check on coronavirus. Once it is done, there is the possibility that the Nigerian economy will also pick up. So the advent of vaccine, is good news for the whole world and also for us in Nigeria. And what we should be hoping for is that government should be able to mobilize the resources, and then acquire the vaccine so that Nigerian people like others in the rest of the world can have, the vaccines. And I've heard that government thinks that the vaccine will be distributed free to every Nigerian. I think the government should do a rethink of that. The government at the moment is facing very serious revenue challenge. Sorry, and that's why it's not able to meet certain levels of spending as it would desire. Government means well for the Nigerian people. It wants to spend money, to take the economy out of the recession, improve livelihoods, but is constrained by revenue. And so when the vaccine comes, government can borrow money and perhaps acquire the vaccine in bulk, But once we have the vaccine in the country, I will suggest that government should give the vaccine free to only the vulnerable groups, low income groups of people who cannot afford to pay for the vaccine. There are numerous, large number of Nigerians, income earners, self-employed, or they work for private sector or government that can purchase vaccine. And so let government give Nigerians the choice to say, if you are able to pay for the vaccine, this is how much you pay, and then you get it. Saying that you want to give everything free is good in principle, but we see the way things work in Nigeria. You may soon hear that vaccine is scarce, is not available, is being cornered here and there, and people are selling it, something that's supposed to be free, selling it, in the black market and so on. So let government identify those who are in a position to pay for vaccine. I will be very willing to pay for the vaccine, and maybe even for a few other people, that we can pay for. So if that is done, then it will be easy for government to get the vaccine and then distribute it, make it available to Nigerians. So that is one. Going into 2021, there are some signs, good signs, that the economy could be better. I've just mentioned one. The vaccine against coronavirus has been developed and is already being administered in some advanced countries. That one can help the economies in those countries to revive. And once the economies revive there, it will have positive impact on the Nigerian economy by way of buying our export goods and getting other benefits. Then secondly, there is an index that we call Purchasing Managers Index, both for manufacturing and non-manufacturing. The latest figures as at November 2020 indicate increases in those indices. In fact, the manufacturing index is above 50, and 50 is the benchmark, whereas the non-manufacturing had moved towards 50. What that one suggests is that there is good prospect for the gross domestic product to grow in 2021. And then the Central Bank of Nigeria is not reneging on its development finance interventions. It will continue to implement various monetary interventions aimed at stimulating the real sector of the economy, aimed at generating employment and invariably reducing poverty. And the specific COVID-19 interventions will also continue, perhaps until we have a good handle on COVID-19. Then the fiscal injections of government. Government has 13.558 trillion naira budget for 2020. If government is able to mobilize resources and spend, perhaps, let's say, for capital, it's able to, spend about 75% of the amount budgeted for capital, that one will go a long way to revitalizing production in various sectors and services of government in various sectors. So there are many good signs that 2021 could be better, but it's on one condition, that all of us play our parts to ensure that COVID-19 infections do not get worse in Nigeria, by complying with simple safety protocols. That's the only way we can help the government to also help us. If we do that one, there is no lockdown. There is no reason why the economy will not revamp in 2021. It may not be as good as we had in 2019, but we'll have positive growth that will begin to improve, and then Nigerians will begin to derive benefits here and there from such growth.
All right, so that's been Talking Business. Today we've looked at the year 2020, which is outgone. We did a retrospect, looked at the economic policies. In fact, how it all started from the very beginning with the lockdown issue, down to the hike in price of commodities, the border reopening. The borders are still reopened. And then we also have Nigerians battling, those who don't have the national identity number, battling to get theirs so they can link with SIM cards. Well, the aim basically is to improve security so that we have at least a database of people. So when fraudulent or criminal activities are committed with phone numbers, it's easy to track down. If you have your SIM card linked with your name, no disconnection. If your business is tied to your phone number, it doesn't get disrupted. Well, I would have given you a handshake, but physical distancing is one of the precautionary measures advised against COVID-19. So I'm just going to do this for you.
Thank you very much.
You can do that as well. All right, my name is Blessing A.J. Until next week, I'm wishing you a prosperous 2021. Bye.